Okay.
Hello, patrons of Patreon. It's me, Emily Ewing, and I'm here with Carol Hodge. And we actually have a song coming out on my new EP, which I'm not sure when that will be out yet. But we'll have a music video out this month, which is July, for our song Next in Line, which is very exciting. I guess we just thought we'd get together as two females in the music industry and talk about music and our experiences with it, really. So, hello.
Hello.
Hi. We'll get into it. Current affairs kind of thing, COVID, and how that's affected the music industry. And just wanted to know for both of us, and particularly yourself, because I know you've got a single and an album coming out, if COVID's kind of benefited your music or if it's affected your music in a positive or negative way.
Yeah, it's not a straightforward answer, really, is it? There's so much within that. I mean, I personally feel that the last year and a half, I've become a lot more productive in terms of my own music. So just as the pandemic was starting, I was preparing to release my previous album, Savage Purge. So yes. I had a tour booked to promote that, and that obviously didn't come to pass. But then in lieu of that was live streaming. I got asked to do quite a few live stream gigs, and that was a whole new experience. And actually through that, I did experience a little bit of growth as in terms of audience, which is what I would have expected to happen had I gone and toured the album. So it was quite interesting to see that, you know, more and more people were still, you know, starting to follow me on social media. We're starting to get on my mailing list and buy things off my website. So yeah, I think there was growth in that respect. But I'm very much a touring sort of animal. You know, I've been doing this for 20 odd years, and the format I've always understood is that you record something and then you go out and tour it. Or you go out, you get enough songs together, go out and tour them. And then through that process, you're kind of honing the tracks as you go anyway. And then you record an album, and then you're flogging that when you're on tour. So to have that really important section of it just pulled away was quite disorienting, as I'm sure it was for all of us.
Well, it was a massive shock. I was going to say, for me, I just found myself writing this new EP, the new song Next in Line, coming soon. I just found myself kind of writing that really because it was no other choice but to do that. Obviously, Ryan Hamilton, who we both have in common, he released a country covers EP called Incommunicado during the first lockdown and stuff. So that was that. So it was really exciting to do that. But I was just going to ask you, do you think this has damaged the industry long term, or do you think we'll get it back? Like, how do you see the music industry kind of panning out from now? Because obviously it's been a massive impact, like you said, live.
Yeah.
Especially if that's what your main income was and what you did.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel very fortunate that I've carried on. I also teach music online as kind of, you know, as a way of paying the bills. And I'm very fortunate that has continued all the way through the pandemic, because otherwise I would have really, really struggled financially. And I know a lot of people who were involved in the live events industry who have just have just had to go and basically start other careers and you know, because there's just nothing left for them. I think musicians are quite adaptable, and as I touched on, you know, we had live streaming, and
yes.
I felt anyway, there was a big surge of support and altruism, and there was a big surge of all the people who support music at grassroots level, recognising what was going on and thinking, well, yeah, I am going to buy her album, or yeah, I am going to give him a tip when he does a live stream. You know, it was I very much felt that, and that was a really powerful, beautiful thing. But yeah, I think it's the live. I mean, you know, and here in the UK, we're supposedly going back to normal in about 10 days' time.
Like COVID.
Yeah, as if all of a sudden it's gone away, even though we've got 30,000 plus new cases every day. So I've been getting quite a few gigs booked over the last couple of weeks. I've had quite a few people get in touch and offer me gigs. but I will still be remaining incredibly cautious in a live gig situation, whether I'm in the crowd or whether I'm performing. And then the flip side of that, in terms of what's happened with the industry, is that, you know, there was that few months where everybody was like, oh, what's going on? Oh, live stream, I'll get my guitar out and do something. And then I think things started kicking in, and people, like you mentioned, were like, I could just do loads of recording. I've got time now.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So, a lot more, recorded material coming out. And as a kickback, just a little detail, the wait time to have vinyl pressed has now gone up exponentially. So, it's taking forever to get albums pressed if you want them on vinyl, just as a little insight.
Okay, so we're going to go back to the beginning of, I was going to say what, all the questions here. So how did you first know music was for you and it was a career you wanted to do?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think they're sort of two separate things, really. I think, you know, from being a little kid, I was just very much drawn to music, drawn to performing. I remember I lived in Scotland until I was 6.5, and I remember the very first school play we did in Scotland when I was like 5 or 6, and I got picked to be I think it was like some sort of like angry bird, or so there was a story about some sort of moralistic, you know, fable about a bird who did something bad and then nobody wanted to be the friend. And I was like, yeah, that was me all over. So yeah, I've always wanted to perform. And then, musically, I mean, I've always sung as well. I used to go to church every Sunday.
Oh, wow.
And singing hymns was always the best bit.
Yeah.
And I had a realisation recently that I learned to sing harmony, because there was an older lady named Winnie who used to stand behind me singing in church, and she'd always put the third on top when we were singing. She'd always sing in harmony. So I could sort of hear she was doing something different, and it sounded really good.
Yeah.
So yeah, really young age. There was that sort of dual thing of like singing in church, and we sang at school all the time. You know, we sang in assembly. Yeah. I don't know if kids do that anymore, but it was what we did.
Like there was like the apples are ripe. There was that weird song. Did you know that one?
Yeah, the plums are red. Thank you, God, that we are fed. Yeah, that was one of the more jazzy ones. I like that one. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if they do that anymore. We'll never know. But so was it? I mean, how did you what age were you where you would like, you wanted to take it to the next level?
Yeah, so this is something I could do with my life.
Yeah.
Probably when I was a teenager, probably early teens. I mean, I joined my first band when I was 15. And that was when I started taking things seriously. You know, I'd always sung and I'd played piano from the age of 8. But I'd never really pulled the two things together. And then I thought, as a teenager, I got into pop punk. I was like really into Green Day, were like my favourite band in sort of like the mid 90s. And then I got asked to be in a band, and we were just doing covers to start with, but we did like a couple of Green Day songs and No Doubt. We did a bit of Fleetwood Mac, and Oasis, and Cooler Shaker, and all those sort of like things that are in the charts at the moment. Yeah. And I think that was when something just lit inside me. I was like, oh, this is actually the best thing ever. So I just want to do this.
You want to be famous? What was that? Because I look, a lot of kids or young adults think like fame is what they want. Is that something that you wanted when you joined the band?
Yeah, for a good, at least a good decade, Yeah. Now the idea makes me feel quite uncomfortable, to be honest, like being recognised and the normality of your life shifting because people know who you are. I don't.
Yeah, well, I think social media's kind of made me realise, and maybe stuff, that fame isn't all it's cracked up to be. because it is so invasive when there is no, because social media is obviously 24/7, it never shuts off, does it? And everything is out there all the time, and news stories break all the time, whereas obviously before not so much. So it's that in itself beast and stuff. So I agree with you. When you're little, it's kind of like, I was like one of those annoying kids, like when my parents had people round, I was like, put on a show, and they were just like, we were just trying to enjoy their evening and stuff. But
yeah, and you were like, right, this is the stage, and I'm going to sing here. This hairbrush is the microphone.
I think I used like a toothpaste, like one of those plastic toothpaste things as a microphone, and a hairbrush. Probably a lot of things is like a thing. But okay, the next question that I have, obviously, I was going to say, there we are. Have you been made to feel by people or other musicians that a disability should have been a disadvantage in your music? Obviously, when it's not, because you're a fantastic musician and singer. And do you find that people, that I've mentioned, that they have a different reaction when they do hear your music and hear how great you are?
Well, it's a really interesting question. I've done a lot of work over the past few years about my acceptance and my embracing of my disability. For a very long time, I used to not really acknowledge it, and I used to hide my hand a lot when I was younger. And I've always, I guess, done lots of things within my power to make it not the most interesting thing about me. So it's like, well, I've just performed on stage, so that's way more interesting than having a few fingers missing, Yes. I think I've been fortunate in that if people have looked at my hands and made judgments about my abilities, I've not really been privy to that.
Okay.
I've never at a gig or online experienced anyone, being particularly rude or particularly nasty, or even there's a little bit of condescension goes on. I think generally the routine that happens is that if people aren't familiar with what I do and they haven't seen me play before, when I'm then on stage, a lot of the time, which surprises me, people don't even notice. I've had a lot of experience where people say like, oh, someone just said, I didn't even notice. They'll come and talk to me after the gig and they'll say they really enjoyed it, but they won't even have noticed my hand. And I think, generally people are sort of pleasantly surprised that I can actually play an instrument and I can actually perform to a relatively competent level.
Yeah. I think you're a credible musician. But I was going to say, I suppose it just goes back to that question, though. But when people do go like, does it make them treat you any differently? Like when they have when they've heard your music, like online or something.
Yeah. It's I think the conclusion I've come to is that generally, people want to be kind.
Yes.
Certainly in the spheres that I have chosen to move in, people want to be supportive, and they want to show that it doesn't bother them, and they want to show that they embrace difference.
Yes.
And sometimes I guess in the same way, I'm not equating the two things because they are hugely different, but in the same way that, the whole like Black Lives Matter has obviously been a movement that's happened over the past year or so, and it has genuinely awoken a load of people to the experience of Black people. And that within those interactions there might be, because somebody's trying so hard to be accepting and to be inclusive and to show I don't care what colour skin you are or what your heritage is, like you're still amazing, you're still my friend, or I still respect you as a musician or whatever. There's a little bit of over egging the pudding going on, people being over you know what I mean, over enthusiastic or whatever, but it comes from a kind place, so I don't mind.
And So I was also going to ask a question about mental health as well. I know we've briefly spoken about it personally before when I last saw you. I think mental health is something you experience and something you deal with.
Yeah. So mental health like issues and difficulties, absolutely. I mean, it's my belief that, you know, everybody is somewhere on the scale of certainly. I mean, I think like anxiety and depression, I think everybody suffers with those things. I think everybody suffers with an element of self-doubt. Everybody suffers with, you know, maybe difficulty being consistent as a person, or, you know, if you've got an ambition or an aim that you're aiming towards, you're working towards, it's difficult to be a robot and be exactly the same every single day of your life, you know. And yeah, I write a lot about my experiences in my songs.
Yeah.
And I think that my mental health experiences are tied up with, you know, my life experiences of having a hand difference and of, like everybody's, it's a whole perfect storm of circumstances, isn't it, that creates you and your mentality and your perspective on what is happening in life. And I think it's brilliant. I think, again, one of the positives that has come out of the whole COVID situation is that people are being more open about their mental health struggles, and people are acknowledging that maybe there is a bit of an issue, and that you can accept that you need help and that you're lonely or you're struggling or you're depressed.
Yeah, I was going to ask if it did kind of affect your music, because I have anxiety and a panic disorders or panic attacks, which I no longer do live performance anymore because that fed into that. So I just stick with, you know, songwriting and recording and session singing in the background. But I was going to say, do you find that it does affect, maybe not so much the writing, as you use it as kind of as part of your writing, but does it affect when you go on tour? Because I mean, that must be quite difficult if you're not feeling that great to have to get up on stage, or if you can kind of channel it where you use it to an advantage.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I love going on tour. It's kind of when I'm in my element. It's the coming off tour that I struggle with. There's always that big dip down where, you know, you've just been doing exactly what you want to do for the past week or 2 weeks or month or whatever, and then you have to come back down to earth and you know, do the washing up and stuff. So yeah, I think it's that. And I think a lot of musicians feel that. They feel that, and especially because often it means you have to return to a day job because it's really difficult to make a living out of touring.
Yeah. But you do piano teaching as well, don't you? So you don't.
Yeah, I teach piano and I teach singing and songwriting as well. So I'm very grateful that my, you know, that day job is within music, and it's it's something that benefits me as a musician every day as well. So
kind of, so it's the after effects of.
Yeah. It's a weird one as well, because I totally get what you mean, but I don't, even if I'm having a bad day, that kind of all goes away when I get on stage. So even if I'm feeling anxious, it's like I know it's gonna help me out. So yeah.
I don't know what that's like. It can be like you sort of think, because I'm sure anybody that goes on stage or anything creative or anything in life, you do have like an element of self-doubt. And I think it's interesting that like you can experience that. Then you have this front of like, of that everything's. It's
a funny one. It's something I've always suffered with. I remember being a little kid and feeling this big black cloud following me around when I was about 8 years old, and nobody else seemed to experience that. And I was very up and down as a child. And then, but I mean, that's just who I am. And I don't feel that I'm putting up a front when I'm being, you know, vivacious or whatever. I feel like that's how I want to behave. But I guess it's that thing of, if you are quite, you know, if you are quite friendly and you come across as quite confident, people just think that's what you're like all the time.
Because they say, so I heard, people like Beyonce, like she's quite very shy in real life, but her Sasha Fierce is her character on stage almost. So it's kind of like two separate. So that's what I kind of mean by front, is some people can kind of, but then, if you're a natural performer, then obviously it's not.
Yeah.
But I was going to say, but for me, it was just, you could see that I wasn't not happy to be there, but you could just see that I was just like,
yeah. And it's interesting that, because it's, I don't think it's a constant either. I think it's something that shifts throughout your life. I think that, I think back to when I was a teenager performing, and probably, well into my 20s, to be fair, I was just so full of myself and so self-assured that it never even, entered my consciousness that I might not be the best singer in the world. And then, as you get older, you have a little bit of, I think I was very much a late bloomer. I think my mentality now at the age of 39 is probably what most people had when they were about 22. I feel like it's taken me a long time to catch up with being an adult. But yeah, and it's interesting that you say about the anxiety preventing you from performing. Is that something that do you sort of lament the loss of that, or do you just feel happier without it? Is it something you'd maybe want to address at some point?
I'd like to do at least one show again, see if I can do it. I'm quite open about this. I'm in therapy now, and I've been in therapy for almost 2 years.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, you deal with other issues, and then that kind of, you slowly build that kind of like, well, that's kind of put to bed a little bit.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see my reaction on stage if it'd be exactly the same, and that it's just stage fright, or if it was just a whole ball of anxiety anyway from past. But also, it'd be interesting to see it.
Yeah, and it's fascinating, isn't it? How much of it is actually the external circumstances that you find yourself in, and how much of it is literally just that voice in your head.
Yes.
And then as well, how much of it is your body's physical reaction to being in that situation?
I remember doing a gig once, and I think this didn't help the whole stage fright or self-doubt or whatever. And every time, so obviously when you have a gig, there's a set of who's in front and a running order. That's what they call them. That's the name. And there was a gentleman in the audience, and he was critiquing everybody on stage. I was due to be on stage next or something. We could just hear him essentially slagging people off. And I remember being is that what everybody's thinking about everybody that's on? Which, obviously everyone has an opinion, but it was so vocal. And it was just one opinion, but I remember that having a massive when you're already so worried. And
yeah, it's almost confirmation that your darkest fears are actually true.
I think some nerves are healthy, but it's just the case of it where, I used to actually be sick before going on stage or waking up like the cold sweats at night, like, oh no. And I was just more comfortable, doing the songwriting and the sessions. I prefer being in the background. Yeah. I think that is me. Whereas someone like yourself, you've got an amazing stage presence when you're on stage. And
that's something that comes with, I feel very comfortable performing generally, but it just comes from doing it so much that I no longer have the space to overthink it. I just have to.
I found I kind of feel like it didn't, the less I did it or the more I did it, didn't really, again, that's just.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, so. Yeah. Next question. I know these are quite heavy questions.
No, it's all good.
Obviously, whether people know this or not, but obviously the music industry itself is quite a male-dominated industry. I don't think I've worked with a female producer before. I think I did one gig once where there was a female sound engineer for the night, but for the most part, it's quite male-dominated. And I was just going to say, do you think it's hard to be a female in the music industry, and if yourself have experienced sexism in music?
Yeah, I think it's what I find sad about it is that so when I first started, touring and playing very regularly, I was still a teenager, and I just then grew up thinking it was normal for there to be hardly any women,
Yes.
and that and even now I've seen there's a lineup for a gig that I'm doing later on this year, and it's an all day festival, and I'm the only female on the bill, and I'm just part of a band on that occasion. And I get it. I'm not saying that every single gig you must have this percentage of female performers, because I know it doesn't work like that, and it shouldn't work like that. But it's just it's very it's a very complex issue, but in a way it's a very simple issue as well. It's like, if you're young and you want to do something with your life, you will have role models, and the behaviour of those role models and the plentitude of them, are there a lot of female band managers? Are there a lot of female sound engineers that you can see regularly, and you think, the idea goes in your head, oh, I could do that, and that's what it all comes down to. Because like you say, as an industry, again, very male centric. If you look at, label bosses, and if you look at, every sort of layer of everything that goes on within the music industry, it's not just performers. It's very, very male dominated.
Yeah. I think it was again someone that I know, they play guitar, and again after a gig they were approached, and someone was like, "Oh, you play guitar really well for a female," and she was a bit like, so like a backhanded kind of compliment. She's like,
yeah,
just kind of, I don't know. I was going to say it's kind of a societal thing. I'm not sure, because like you were saying, how many. I mean, I'm probably guilty of it myself, because I'm impressed by female drummers, but they're just as capable as male drummers. But you don't see it that often.
Yeah, and that's a shame, isn't it? It's because it's not normalised. And I know exactly what you mean. I mean, I thankfully there's a lot more female musicians out there performing regularly within the spheres that I move in now, which is a brilliant thing to see. But yeah, I mean, I've been guilty of it. I remember going to Leeds Festival one year. I can't even remember what band it was, but it was an all-female punk band. And I remember, I mean, I think I was only about 20 at the time, but I remember my attitude being, oh, go on then, are you any good? And within that, there's the whole thing of it's a rarity, so it really took me back. And at that time, I had a whole thing of, you're brought up and encouraged to see other females as competition. So I had all that going on in my head as well. But yeah, I've been guilty of it as well. I've just been like, oh, she can actually play. All right. Oh, okay. Whereas now I'm like, of course I go in with the expectation that everybody can play their instrument properly.
Yeah.
To get up on a stage.
But I was going to, that's what was kind of a segue to that bit, was you have, I remember on Facebook that you wrote a piece about what females are kind of almost pit against each other, and that it is competitive. And that is how it almost feels. What I mean, do you still feel like it is that way? Have you experienced that from other women musicians as well?
Not overtly, but I think covertly, yes, absolutely. And I think it's because, like I say, we're brought up to think that if you're a woman, so not only do you have to prove yourself, because people don't expect that you can do your job properly, but you also have to be under a certain age, and you also have to be physically attractive. So you've got this, holy trinity of things, these expectations that are thrust upon you that aren't applicable to males. They may be to a certain extent, but not to the extent that they are to women. I've just finished listening to Lily Allen's autobiography on audio book, and she talks a lot about how sexist the music industry is, and how the basic feeling even now in 2021 is that if you're a female and you're over the age of 35, like, forget it. Unless you're Beyonce or you're Pink and you're already fully established, you're not. It's not going to happen. You're not going to get that leg up to make you a successful, like, certainly in the pop world, it's not going to happen. I
was going to say, do you see that could be a possibility of changing, or do you think it's something that's just going to be the way it is with the foreseeable?
I think more than ever, it's being discussed and it's being hauled out into the spotlight. So I think we've got the best chance that we've ever had of that actually changing. And there's so many, like, really positive, like, role models out there who just haven't got that level of exposure. I was just thinking, we were really lucky, growing up in the 90s or whatever. I mean, think of, Skin from Skunk Anansie springs to mind. I thought she was absolutely amazing. And I was just like, again, here's somebody who just doesn't care, who's just an amazing vocalist and songwriter. And, her physicality, like, it kind of doesn't matter. And there's still things like that do break through. But I just think generally, and it, like you mentioned, it's a societal thing. It's just women are just still judged on their appearance. And especially when you get to a certain age, you're kind of... I think
the age thing for me as well.
Yeah.
Like, I think almost like, annuals as well. I was going to say, music gets better for me. Like, I feel like the better songs I'm writing is like now. I hope they'll continue to get better. Do you feel like you mentioned, obviously, the COVID's given you some growth as an artist, and do you feel with age your writing gets better? So it's not just like, and that, that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was chatting to somebody about this yesterday. There's a woman who was a colleague of mine at BIM, the British and Irish Modern Music Institute, where I used to teach. And she's called Claire Pilling, and she's an amazing, singer, songwriter in her own right, and she's an amazing educator as well. And she wants to start a podcast that's all about women, particularly older women, as in if you're towards the end of your 30s and over, which isn't old at all. But in terms of music industry, it is old, and you are all of a sudden treated as a completely different entity once you basically get to an age where people are like, oh, do I want to have sex with her? And once you go over that hump, it's like, oh, well, she's not relevant anymore. Whereas if you're a male, the Rolling Stones are like 109 years old and they're still touring,
Richards is just, he will be here. I've seen that joke go around, but he will actually be here when the Earth's.
Yeah, Keith Richards and cockroaches, very little else, yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, I'll kind of wrap it up a little bit. But you've got music coming out, so what can we expect from Miss Carol Hodge?
Yeah, well, my lovely patrons who were sailing aboard the good ship Hodge, I don't know why, I just decided that my Patreon had to be littered with loads of nautical references, and I've just kind of stuck with it, I've already released my album to my patrons as a thank you for being so awesome and supporting me, so that's out there. And I've actually, I'm sort of postponing the release of the album proper and my first single, to get a more, try and have more of a run up at it really, and just have more of a chance of getting more exposure. And I'm working with a PR to do that.
Okay, cool.
Because it's the thing I hate the most about being a solo artist, is having to promote myself. I'm really not very comfortable with it, and it's and I don't know I don't know anyone who works at Q or Enemy or Kerrang or whatever. It's like it's very hard to get a foot in the door. So get some help.
Will it be? You've mentioned vinyl again. So will it be vinyl, download, stream, CD? Will it be all those things?
Yes, yes. Yeah. So the vinyl really that I think is the hopefully the most alluring format on which to purchase it. There's a turquoise vinyl, 250 of those getting pressed.
Oh, I like it.
And then there's a sunburst, yellow and turquoise, which is supposed to look like the sun in the sky. Whether it will or not, it's just one of those things, isn't it, with vinyl? When you get it pressed, it's like, well, that doesn't look like I thought it would, but it still look pretty.
Yeah. Well, does anyone know the name of the album yet?
Yes. Yeah. It's called The Crippling Space Between.
Oh, that's a great name. Okay, where did the name come from? There we are. Tell us about it.
Good question. Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of puns. I'm a big fan of ambiguity. I'll try not to be too overt and on the nose about things. So I think, you know, we've all experienced that space, you know, with physical space, but not being able to touch people for the last year and a half. You know, and then, you know, being able to be in the same physical space, people having to work from home, and that feels crippling. And then the front cover is me with, you know, my hand and a fake hand. So it's like the crippling, having a hand. Like, see what I did there? So yeah, lots of layers. That's what I like.
I'm looking forward to hearing it. And when it comes out, do you have an official? I know patrons have it already, but for everybody else, when does it?
Yeah, TBC. I mean, it basically, if people have pre-ordered, I'm going to get it sent out as soon as the vinyl arrives, which is hopefully going to be in August. I'll get everything sent out. But the official release date, which is, you know, kind of for press really, and potentially for streaming, would be sometime in September, probably towards the end of September now.
Again, I'm excited to hear it. Before it gets pushed a little bit more. I know there's not much I can really say about it, because obviously my EP is still being written and recorded, but we have our song together next in line, and there will be a video coming out for that first at some point, in the middle of this month. So
yeah,
keep an eye on that. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, it's a great song, and it was a real honour to sing with you. And I love that. I mean, a lot of people know who I am because I play in Ryan Hamilton's band, and there's a lovely little what's it called? Kismet. That's the word. A kismet going on, because obviously on Ryan's albums you sing the backing vocals, and live I sing the backing vocals.
Yeah. Team.
Yeah. So we're basically the same person.
That's quite funny, actually. Yeah, I was just going to say, because I've seen that a few times where, and I mean, I understand that not everyone's going to read like the credits.
Yeah.
But I'd comment to people like, "Oh, well done for you being on the backing vocals for the album." And
yeah, I'm always very quick to say, no, it wasn't me, it was Emily.
No, it's great that they think that, you know, our voices are quite similar enough that it's you.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah. No, well, vice versa as well. Absolutely. I think I'm sometimes a bit guilty live of getting a bit excited and not really thinking about blending my tone as a backing vocalist. But yeah.
That you're you. Like when I hear you singing, I know it's you. I mean, that's like a complimentary thing. Like you don't blend in or anything. You stand out.
Well, it's, you know, it's kind of your job when you're doing back vocals to blend in, isn't it? So.
But yeah, thank you for talking to me and discussing quite interesting, quite heavy topics.
Yeah, always a pleasure. And it's, you know, I'm really excited about this single coming out with us both on. It's quite an event. Good stuff.
Yeah, I saw it gets really awkward now. We're like,
yeah, how do we end this? How do we say goodbye?
Yeah, but I mean, anyone watching this, thank you for watching it as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Patreon. And that's it. That's just
their patrons. So I'll say, I feel like a brownie now, or is that for brownies? Yeah.
Oh, they do
brownies.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like signing off with a little brownie salute.
This is the brownie promise. Is that what it was? Anyway,
yeah, anyway, bye. Thanks for watching.